I've seen a lot. Amid the celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated.
Which brings me to functional freeze, which I think is really important for anyone listening to this podcast. You know, we know that fight and flight response has a freeze element. So if I'm a caveman, I'm either going to fight that tiger, I'm going to run away from that tiger, or I'm going to freeze until that threat passes. Now, fighting's my least chance of surviving. So that's lowest on my list. Running away is good and freezing's really good. Now, in the corporate world, the sporting world, we can't fight anymore. That's been sort of, even in sport, that's not really, we're not seeing mass people fighting the opposition and fights breaking out. So my option then to get out of a dangerous situation is to run or is to freeze. And one of the biggest things, epidemic levels in business today, is functional freeze. And that is where I'm there and I'm doing my job, but I'm not there. I'm just going through the motions because I am in this frozen state, because I have sat in a stress cycle for so long. Now I'm frozen. And what functional freeze shows up as is it's really difficult to make a decision. It's like I park my car and I sit in my car and scroll on social media for 15 minutes because I just I'm just frozen. I can't actually take action. I get out of the shower and I sit with a towel wrapped around me on the couch for 15 minutes before I get dressed. Functional freeze. I sit at my desk and I work on low priority work, or I push emails around. Functional freeze. And then the leader who became a leader because he doesn't have functional freeze. Maybe he became a leader because his stress response is to run really fast. His stress response is to fight. He worked his way up the corporate ladder because his stress response happens to take more action than the people working with him. And he's tearing his hair out by these people in functional freeze because he thinks that they don't care, or that they're lazy, or that they're addicted to their phones. Yet he's not thinking and taking responsibility for how can I shift their emotional state so that I can get them over into an emotional state which now allows them to take action from their strengths.
And what are the best ways he can do that?
Yeah. The best ways that he can do that. He can act as their acceptance. So he can help them accept the stress of the environment, the overwhelm that they're in. Leaders tend to go, we got this, you can do this, it's fine. Where if he actually sat with that person and said, hey, I get it, he had empathy around, it's a tight deadline and we don't have a lot of resources. I get what's being asked of you is really hard, but you can't control that outcome. So I'm using empathy to dial down their alarm system, or I'm using vulnerability to dial down their alarm system. So I'm sort of saying, hey, I'm struggling too. I'm really exhausted at the moment. But I'm using these tools of empathy and vulnerability and acceptance to dial down the smoke alarm for them when they can't do it themselves. Once that starts dialing down, it's a bit like when we dial it down in ourselves, then I can put their flashlight on in a more helpful place. And a more helpful place is when I go to evidence of success of when they've done it before. Hey, but I know you're really great at building connection with people, so why don't you just go and focus on, really connecting with them as a person, and I reckon you'll find that you'll get into this meeting. You'll feel more relaxed in this meeting. So I'm dialing down the alarm system before I try and put their focus on what they can do. Now, that's one way. Another way, and one of the most powerful tools a leader should get in their toolbox, and they will do it naturally for themselves, it's how they've become a leader, but them learning how to do it for other people is really important as well. And that is, I call it chunking down. And chunking down is where I take this big picture. So chunking down is where I take this big picture and I break it down into a smaller piece. Now, if that makes sense, we all know how to do that. I say I'm the queen of chunking down. How I do 4 kids and a busy business and quadriplegia is I just chunk everything down. Right, I chunk it into small pieces. But as a leader, when we are able to chunk down a task for someone and we put someone's flashlight, someone's attention, their focus on a task that is small and is achievable, and we guarantee them success, then what happens is it kickstarts an A-game loop for them. So let me give you real life examples. We have someone in my team, they're completely overwhelmed. They're working on this project. They don't know where to start. They, it's all too much. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough resources. And we go, stop, I get it. Like, yeah, it's really hard. I remember being in your position. So I'm using empathy to calm their loop down. So now they're open to hearing me because their loop is calmed down and they're out of that, running mode. And then I say to you, hey, you know what? Like, I know that I've seen how good you are when you have a clear plan to work from. So why don't you just spend the next couple of hours contacting a couple of people, asking for their help and get a solid plan in place. Now, I've set them a task that they cannot fail at. They cannot fail asking someone for help. They cannot fail just, creating a plan. So they go and do that. And I go back to them, how'd you go with your plan? How'd you go with getting help from, whoever? Yeah, great, I did that. Now they're thinking thoughts of like, okay, I've got this, because they've already done something successfully rather than sitting in the big picture of I can't do this, this is too much. I've guaranteed them a helpful thought. I've guaranteed them a feeling of success. That's going to guarantee that they take a helpful action that is going to now put them in an A-game loop. And if I've hired the right person, they're going to take care of it themselves. I see this in sport all the time. There is an athlete and they're not performing and they're not executing their process and they're clearly in overwhelm. I can't get the ball. I've made this mistake. I'm playing terribly. And then I see a coach come in and give them instruction that drives overwhelm further. Okay, we need you to get the ball more. You've got to get, on the outside of your player, and I want you to be more physical in the contest and get your head over the ball. Now, they're in this wild fight and flight right now. They're in functional freeze. And someone's just asked me to be more aggressive over the ball, get the ball more. And I'm like, I can't, oh my God, what if I fail? What if I can't do that? I'm asking myself to be more aggressive, yet I'm in danger, threat response mode, which is actually trying to keep me safe. So there's no way I'm going to put my head over the ball. I know I'm not putting my head over the ball, so that drives my overwhelm even further and my fear of failure even further. Whereas if the coach had the courage to get out of his B game, which is like, oh my gosh,
it's all run
my
by
athlete's not performing well. And what are people going to think of me because my team's losing? So I want to give him all this information, do this, do that, because, he's out of my control and I'm wildly spiraling. And actually just said, hey, yeah, I can see you're really struggling out there. I get it. It happens. We have those games. So I'm using empathy. I'm using vulnerability. I know what it feels like not to touch the ball. I get it. It's okay. So that's starting to calm that alarm down. And I say to him, let's go back to the little soccer player on the forward line. I'm like, you know what? Don't try and get the ball. I want you for the next 5 minutes, just get up on your toes and get your feet moving. I want you to really focus on your feet moving. Pay attention to moving behind your player, moving early, moving really, having a lot of change of direction. Can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. Is that easy? Do you know how to do that? Yeah. Have you got the skill to do that? Yeah, good. Just do that. And I always say this to my athletes, but I want you to do that without any attachment to getting the ball. You're not trying to get the ball here. I don't want you to try and get the ball. I want you to try and get your feet moving right. And, there was an example with an AFL team I worked with this year. this guy. We were coming up to finals. He was on the fringe of being selected. So every game had this weight to it. And he's in the forward line, and we know that we judge our forwards off scoring goals. So there's this weight of expectation. If I score goals, I'll get in the team for the finals. If I don't score goals, I'm not going to get in the team for the finals. That's a lot to play with. That's danger, danger, danger. My B game is hectically on that stat sheet. And so this guy, who's a really experienced player, comes up to me at halftime. He goes, I'm struggling. I'm nowhere. My head's nowhere. I have not touched the ball. I'm freaking out here. And I've got like maximum 1-2 minutes to talk to these people at halftime. And I look at him in the eyes. I'm like, Pax, I want you to go to first I said to him, tell me, go back to a game this year when you were playing at your best. Have you got one in your mind? Yep. Tell me what you're doing. He goes, I'm just moving. My feet are really active. I'm getting a body on my opposition, but really it's my feet. Like my feet are really just doing so much work. They're doing so much work off the ball. I'm like, okay, I want you to go out there and I want your feet. I want you to get movement in your feet off the ball. Like put full attention, hold the energy in your feet, check in on your feet, have everything around your feet. He's like, yep. And he's about to run off. I grab him, I look at him in the eyes and I go, but there's one thing. You cannot try and get that ball. You cannot try and score a goal. You are not allowed to look at you. You're only allowed to critique your feet. You're only allowed to question, are my feet doing what they're supposed to do? Have you got that? He said, yep. I'm like, it's going to be hard, but you are not allowed to judge yourself on getting that ball. You got it? Yep. He goes out there within a minute. He gets the ball. He scores his first goal. He had 3 goals in like the first 5 minutes of that quarter.
Wow.
So you cannot say to someone who works for you, I want you to go away and I just want you to get this piece right. I just want you to connect with Sally and your team, ask for her help, work out a plan, and then come in that afternoon and go, is that all you've done? Like, why have you done that? You have to trust that I'm giving them this piece because when I do, they are going to feel back in control. They're going to start running helpful thoughts and feelings, and they're going to get themselves out of this hole quicker than I can direct them out of this hole.
Thank you for sharing that story because I think it was really powerful for me in terms of solidifying my takeaway on the 2 of the key pieces. And please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. But
No, you're doing great.
But which is one is identifying the B game. What happens? How do you feel? What are you thinking? What's your actions? What's your beliefs? What's your behavior? Like where's it physically in your body? All that kind of stuff. But then there's this piece too, where it's like when you have to shift to the physical and there's not like a fake it till you make it, but you were focusing on, to me right there, that story was really about focusing on the basics.
Yeah. Because you've got to get your flashlight on it. Yeah. Right. I can't have my flashlight in 2 places. Yeah.
Right. What I think might get missed, my hallucination is that what I think might get missed is people don't know they don't identify what success is or what it feels like. And so I think that I probably have some questions around, and I don't even know what the questions are, to be honest with you, but I just kind of like the light bulb going off in my head is just that there's, how could we help as leaders, help people, or as teachers, as parents, help our kids to know, like, hey, this is when it feels good. Like, so for the athlete there that you were talking about, it's like moving your feet. Like, you solicited from him a past moment when he felt successful, and people don't do that for themselves. So I think there's 2 pieces. One is leaders, but also for the people who are listening, where it's like, hey, how do we gauge self-help? What's that feel like? And truthfully, like I probably would not rank super high, like on the being able to identify like the exact feelings that I have when I'm in whatever it is called flow or feeling like I'm, in the zone, super successful. Like, so I just always figure, like, if I don't have full awareness, probably a lot of other people don't have full awareness. So is there a piece there? I don't even know what the question is, to be honest
No,
with you.
that's okay. That's fine. I think I talk to leaders about this all of the time. When someone's doing their job, we're like, great, they're doing their job. They should be doing their job. And then we tell them when they're not doing the job. You never tell them what they're doing well and how that helps them. And so we don't have a profile of what I'm actually doing when hey, in that meeting when you asked that question, that really helped me feel more confident because, like we're not having those discussions. We just think you did your job. You should do your job. We don't call out the A game. We don't celebrate the A game. We don't look at it. We don't reward it. We reward the, thanks, you worked really long hours. Dwayne went above and beyond this week. It's like, we reached that target. Well done. We made that tight deadline. We don't ever say, hey, Dwayne, I really liked the way you connected with that person. I thought that gave the client, it really helped the client. And then that helped me negotiate the deal because you had, built that connection with them. We don't look at the pieces that we don't build a profile of what our best looks like. Mm-hmm. And we stumble across flow. And flow is like, if we can get into flow, great. But we want to we want to best execute the actions even when we're uncomfortable, even when, things aren't going our way. Because we know that when we execute the process like this, when I stand up in a board meeting and I have my posture big and I have eye contact and I have, really rehearse my information and I'm clear on my knowledge, I execute the process to the best of my ability. Now, if I happen to not be feeling great or I not trap into that magical feeling where time stands still, that's okay. I still know how to execute the process. And so we need to, I encourage people to bring in a process, and I brought this in we brought this in at Richmond Football Club when we had the dynasty of 3 premierships in 4 years. Richmond's story is so powerful. They were 13th on the ladder, and they were getting worse. And they had made finals for sort of a few years in a row, never got past the first final. This is in AFL. And they're one of the biggest clubs in the AFL. And we had our first ever female president, Peggy O'Neill. And there was a whole public noise about the coach being sacked, the captain, a complete rebuild, the board being thrown over. And Peggy came in and she said, you know what? No, I believe we've got the right people here. I believe we have the people here in this place to get the job done. We just need to do it differently. And effectively, we didn't know it at the time. That's when we started as a group building this mindset framework. She's effectively saying, if we get more people in their A game for longer, we've got everything we need in this room. We don't need new people. We just need more A game, less B game. So let's work on that rather than work on throwing people out and getting new people in. I think that's a really, one of the most important leadership messages. You will usually have the right people in the room. You just don't have their attention and focus in the right place. And so what we brought in as a group and as a team was something called an A game, B game review. And at the start of each week, so the first thing that we did after the game we played is we had an A game, B game review where we sat there and we looked at, what was our B game? How did it show up in that game? Well, I kicked that ball out on the full and I couldn't stop thinking about it and I felt this deep shame and then my feet went really flat. And then what happened? Well, then, Trent saw that and he came over to me and he helped me put my attention back on getting a physical body with my opposition. That really helped me. And we called it name it to tame it. We started naming all this stuff that was going on internally for us. So it started losing its power over us. And we started to build this profile of this is what it looks like when we go to unhelpful places. These are the things that drive it. This is what it looks like. This is how it shows up for each other. This is the things that help us get over into the A game. These are the things that are there when we are performing at our best. And because we were calling it out and building awareness around it, it became so easy on a field for us to catch when we're in an unhelpful place or catch someone else who was in an unhelpful place. And then we also knew what we should put our attention on. But that was weekly work. And we just in businesses, families, never pay any attention to it, never talk about it, never critique it, never look at it, and expect us to be able to find it in the most pressurized situations.
Right. That's so true.
And then we think if we show them more football clips and we talk about the process more, that they're going to actually execute it more. Well, they didn't not execute the process because they don't understand the process. What this meeting showed up, well, we didn't execute that process because I couldn't stop thinking about kicking the ball out on the floor. I couldn't stop thinking about that my dad was in town and watching the game and what was he going to think of me. So we needed more time in the program to talk about that and look at that and see that. We didn't need more time looking at more football clips.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So it's a really good point. And I love the phrase, name it to tame it. Like, it's so good. Where do you, and I'm kind of hallucinating what someone might be saying as they're driving their car, listening to the podcast.
I do that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Like where they might say, well, okay, that's great. But where do you cross the line between identifying a B game and being critical or over, like criticism and where, how do you avoid that?
Yeah. So there's a difference between critique and criticism. Criticism is when I'm talking about you as a person. Critique is when I'm talking about your actions. And so when I say to someone, you are just so unreliable. You're so unreliable. You come late to meetings all of the time. That is very different to when you turn up late to a meeting, then our meetings become really ineffective and it's affecting our team. So we need you to turn up on time for us to have more effective meetings. One's critiquing the action, one is criticizing. Now, criticism will lead to shame. I'm not good enough. Shame's the lowest vibrational feeling in the body. That's when we're going to go deeply into that hiding, small fear response. Guilt will more likely come from when being called out when we critique. And that's like, my actions weren't really good enough, and hopefully can propel learning from that. One of the things that is missing in a lot of organizations is a really robust critiquing system. So what we tend to do is we tend to have these feedback mechanisms in place, the quarterly review, even the weekly work in progress meetings. We inherently as humans avoid giving feedback because our greatest fear, one of our threats, is fear of other people's opinions. We don't like people to think badly of us. We might be outs from the tribe. So this is all our survival wiring. So we avoid anything that can make people not think highly of us. So we don't want to give that feedback. We're also in a world where political correctness now, a lot of our leaders are fearful of, am I not creating a psychological safe, environment if I say that? So I just don't. I avoid it. The person receiving the feedback, they don't want to get the feedback because of their danger wiring. Their wiring is on fear of what the boss thinks of them, fear of, so everyone's avoiding this. And we avoid it to the point where now it's our quarterly review. And now I'm already deeply in my B game because I haven't received feedback for a quarter. I'm going in there wildly in my B game. What's he going to say? Is he say something bad? And so I'm already meeting it in this, threat response. I'm giving it in a threat, a threat way, and it doesn't end well. If we create an environment that has constant critiquing, This is what we did at Richmond Football Club. Let's look at every single game. Let's look at training. What did we do well? Where did it go wrong? We just have a moment at the end of meetings. Hey, what was good for us then? What helped us have a great meeting then? Well, we had a really tight agenda. We were okay when someone excused themselves because they weren't, needed in the meeting. Like, let's start looking at it constantly, critiquing things constantly. This is when we critique what we're thinking, critique what we're feeling, critiquing our actions. We're taking those learnings and taking them into the next performance moment. That is growth. And the more we critique, the more we grow. Here's a really important piece with critiquing. And we all love Brene Brown, and we all have got Brene Brown's messaging around vulnerability. But the world has got it slightly wrong. We've taken what Brene is saying about this power of this vulnerability and thinking if I go into a workplace and I share, that I had a tough upbringing and, my relationship's not going great at the moment, that somehow that vulnerability is going to lead to me being a greater leader. The piece around critiquing and vulnerability and accountability and A game and B game and how that all comes together is, as a leader, when I'm really good at this piece of being vulnerable, helping people with acceptance, having empathy, I'm effectively saying to my team, I don't have this right. I'm not perfect. I'm not some superhero. I get things wrong. I get how you feel. I'm worried about that too. I have all that stuff. In that moment that I'm creating that belief system in the team that I'm human and human behavior is flawed and we've got these B games and we're going to have them too, I now enable that person in my team to meet the moment that I'm critiquing without that defensiveness up. So it enables me to go, hey, what worked in that meeting? What didn't work in that meeting? I didn't get that bit right. I struggled with that. So that now we're critiquing for the pure sake of critiquing. Everyone knows that we're flawed. Everyone knows that we're not perfect and don't have all the answer. So now we're open to critiquing constantly, all of the time, in all of the moments, with no defensiveness, no threat response, no running away, no hiding, no running towards. We're just there, critiquing it, grabbing the lessons, moving on. If you want an accountable workplace, that is what it looks like.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's huge. Very huge. I was, you were talking about a lot of that stuff, and I'm like, oh, man, I make so many of these mistakes.
Don't we all, right?
Oh God, yeah.
Like I say that to everyone every single day. I get this stuff wrong every single day, particularly as a parent. We had some footballers come over for dinner and they said to my kids, oh, we were talking today about how lucky you are having Emma as your mum. She's so calm. She's so great. All this. My kids looked at them. They said, are you for real? You get her A game. We get a B game. I get it wrong every day. I really do. I think that's part of the human experience. And this is what's so beautiful, like to all the leaders out there. I will forever hold my experience at Richmond Football Club so dearly in my heart because I truly experienced what it felt like to be in a team of people who could so openly be vulnerable in an appropriate way for that environment. Everyone so intimately know each other's A game and B game that if you're in your B game, you were never judged, but someone was there to help you shift. And we were there to constantly critique people in really open, honest ways. In sport, as you would know, there's certain structures and processes that are in your control. And if you don't adhere to those, the structure of your team breaks down. And we could have really robust, difficult conversations around that because we got all these bits right. And how Richmond Football Club went from 13th on the ladder and not winning a premiership for 37 years to winning the next 3 out of 4 premierships.
Wow.
Like, that is
Wow.
huge. And they should have won 4, but, you know, they realized where they went wrong in that. But that is like unheard of in sport. And you will get every person from that time. If you asked every single person, what did you love about that time? Not one person will say the premiership. The sheer experience of being in a group of humans existing in an environment like that was something that I can't describe.
It's powerful to be a part of a team that is focused on, you know, one outcome or, you know, the one thing, and they're directing their energy and their focus and all that attention into it. Um, and it, and sometimes I hear in business, and I know it's not true, because, you know, one of the best organizations I ever worked in, um, which I didn't own, um, but you were voted in and you were voted out. Nobody got hired. Nobody got fired. It was a team vote. The owner never hired one person. And I feel sometimes where, or I not feel, I hear like so often, business owners will be like, "Yeah, I know, but like our business is different because, you know, they're you know, they have other distractions. Their kids, they're this, they're that. They don't really care about the business. They're just looking for a job. You know, people." The most recent one is, you know, that we hear, and on this one I actually do sometimes I find myself subscribing to it a little bit, which is, you know, since the pandemic, people, you know, they want to work from home, and we, you know, it's harder to build teams and have these conversations and build culture, and, you know, we're losing that shift, and then a whole bunch of things, you know, delineate from there. So I just curious if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah. It's tough. Like, I think the way I describe what happened over in the pandemic is that everyone's B game went wild. Like, that there's a whole lot of new dangers in our environment that were to a level that were just so extreme for a lot of people. You know, that wasn't my experience, but for a lot of people, what they're seeing on the news and what they're seeing in the world, and they're building this fear response that is just wild. And then their home becomes this safety, and then this safety becomes comfortable and it becomes habitual. And we're wired for comfort, we're wired for safety. And now we're asking them to go back out into the world. That's really difficult. We're missing the impact that we can have as leaders when we take the time to impact someone's emotional state before we're trying to impact their actions. So we get stuck on, I need them to do more of this, less of that. I need them to come into the office more. I need them to do this, don't do that. And we're jumping between looking at the results we want and looking at the actions they're bringing, the results we want and the actions that we're bringing. Whereas, what if we actually took some time to look at, well, what's the emotional state that is driving these actions? And rather than coming at it from the emotional state that works for me, the leader, well, what about I actually try and get into your world and understand what is working for you? What gets you excited? What's your value system? What do you believe is true in the world? And connect what I want to you and your internal emotional state. You know, I see people, you know, and they won't come into the office and they've got to be finished by fives. And these millennials, they don't do this and they don't do that. Yet they're in a protest about animal rights and they're on a megaphone. This person who doesn't have enough confidence to speak up in a meeting is on a megaphone on the weekend, you know, spruiking the rights of animal, you know, protection and wildlife protection, and is working till midnight to distribute flyers and is rallying politicians to do what they want. They don't seem to have a problem with any of that stuff because it's connected to something that excites them and
Right.
something that they're passionate about and something that they care deeply. And we think as an organization, we spend so much money on our value. You know, here's here's, our business's value, and we're going to give it to you, and we want you now to take action based on our values, this company values, because we just paid this leadership consultant a hell of a lot of money to come up with this. So now we would like you to take action from it. Well, that's not how humans work. Like, how about we find out what makes my team tick? What excites them? What are their values? And connect it to what actions I, want from them, or what actions this business needs from them. And so we're actually thinking about the emotional state that the people in my team, and how can I shift their emotional state, and how I shift your emotional state is going to be different to how I shift someone else's emotional state. It feels counterproductive as a leader. I don't have time for that. I don't have time to do all that. I just need this action taken. And what tends to happen is the person that just happens to their value system fit in with my value system as a leader, we work really well together and they get promoted, and that's how it seems to work. And we're losing really good people. So how can I connect them to something that is going to excite them and create a different narrative for them? I worked with a leadership group of a financial institution here in Australia, and they were pretty disconnected to my work because they were so overwhelmed and so busy. They would come into my sessions, and this is what happens. The company hire me because they think we need this, and I then am forced onto these people. These people weren't asking for this. These people don't think they've got time for this. It's not connected to what they need at all. And so they're sort of half doing emails, half listening to me. And we got to the very last session, and I get a phone call that morning, and it's like, Emma, don't come in. You cannot come in today. Don't come in. And it was quite urgent and quite like, I'm like, oh God, we can't tell you why, but don't come in. Can't tell you why, don't come in. And like, I'm just sat there, and like 24 hours later, all over the news is that they'd been hacked, and the information of all of these people in this financial institution was now being held to ransom by these hackers. And so they were like deep in that mode, as you can imagine, emergency mode. And anyhow, I didn't do any work with them for like 3 months, and then they wanted good on their last session that they didn't have. So they're like, hey, can you come in for that last session we paid for? So I'm thinking, okay, well, what do I do here? So I said to them, tell me, how did you go through that? And they had this excitement to them. Like, it was awesome. Like, we were so connected. We were so, like, they were so proud of how they handled it. And it felt so good to them. So I'm like, great, well, let's look at this. What were you doing? How were you connecting? How are you communicating? What worked? Like, let's build a profile of what was so good when you were under this pressure. And I think the standout thing for them was how all of a sudden, when they had this common focus, common enemy, they connected over this common enemy, and they just needed to do whatever was required to stop this common enemy. And the most overwhelming comment from them was, we saw things in people that we didn't know. Like Zach from IT, we didn't know he had the capability of doing that and that. We saw people bringing strengths to the table we never knew that they had. We saw people going above and beyond in a way that we never knew that they could, because they were so deeply connected to this purpose of bringing down this enemy. And you were no longer judging each other, trying to compare to each other, trying to get one up on the person that you're working on, trying to your ego stamp your ground on your territory. You just let everyone show up and bring their best with this common purpose. And it was amazing. And you saw things that you have judged, so many people that they had judged, well, he never does that. And no, we can't give that to him because he's no good at that. But you saw all of these strengths, and you had all of these resources now available to you that you'd never had before, because you were letting people bring the best of themselves, because you were not focused on all of this stuff and you just had this common purpose and passion. So it's like, how can we do that? How can we connect people to an inspired vision that sits outside of them, that is bigger than all of these internal narratives around being tired and too much work and not enough resources? What's this inspired vision that we can connect on that is going to drive us in a way that feels really good and builds really great momentum?
You know, it's funny. It's like you almost just asked the next question, which is, how do we connect, you know, people on an inspired vision? And it just kind of like dawned on me there, and maybe I'm not perceiving it quite properly, but it was like, it's almost as though, you know, the forced environment or the leverage of the situation caused people to move into their A game and out of their B game because of, you know, a changed environment.
Yeah. I shared the example in a former life. I worked whilst I was studying as a pharmaceutical rep, and I hated it. Like I really hated. I felt it soulless. Like I just hated what I was doing, and I oh, these people don't want me here. And so as a pharmaceutical rep, you're trying to get in front of a doctor to tell them about a drug so that they prescribe the drug more. And the doctor doesn't want you there, and you got to fight the reception to get past the receptionist to get in front of the doctor. And I used to just hate it. And you'd take food as a way to, hey, come and have lunch with me. I'll bring food into the lunchroom if you come and listen to my message. And there was a moment when I remember I was standing at the reception desk, and the receptionist buzzed the doctor and said, "The lunch lady's here." And I was like, oh, shoot me now. Like, I don't want to be doing this. And then when my son was injured and he was in hospital, so he broke his neck, and, you know, part of a spinal cord injury, the sooner you can get the body moving, the more you keep messages firing, the more chance you have to retain muscle below the injury site, and the more chance you have of reconnecting the messages and recovery. And Australia, like, my son ended up at a children's hospital because he was 14 at the time of his accident. They're not really equipped for spinal cord injury, so he didn't go to a spinal rehab centre where they probably had more information. So we got the benefit of being in a beautiful, nurturing children's hospital, but not necessarily the same level of equipment available and knowledge available around. And that one important piece of equipment is called an FES bike, which is this stimulate. It puts you put pads on the body that are not getting messages, and an electrical stimulation goes into the muscle, and that makes the muscle move. So they're riding a bike, but their mind is not telling their legs to move. The electrical stimulation is telling the legs to move. Right. And it's a really critical piece of equipment. So we're hounding the hospital, get him on the bike, get him on the bike. We've been talking to America, what do we need to do with this kid? And we're pushing him to get on the bike. Have we got the bike there? Yeah, the bike's there. Have you got the pads there? Oh, yeah, we don't know. We're going to get the pads, you know. Anyway, there was a moment where I'm like, what is going on here? Why can we not get this kid on the bike? And there's like this tussle between us. And they're like, we don't know how to use it. We don't have the pads we need, and we don't know how to use it. And it was in that moment, I was no longer a pharmaceutical rep, but I know there will have been a rep for that company at some stage that went to that hospital to show them how to use that bike and to equip them with the pads. And they were like, no, we're too busy. We don't want rep here. I hate reps, blah, blah, blah. And in that moment, I was like, why did that rep not connect with the fact that my son one day is going to have just broken his neck and need that machine for any possibility of recovery? And I get emotional speaking about it, because it's like, in this entire situation, no one connected to the patient. the nurse connected to being too busy with blah, 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 blah. The rep connected with, oh, my God, I can't be bothered. They never let reps in. I mean, I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but no one in that moment connected to the patient. Now, I know, having worked in pharmaceutical companies, that the value statement of the organisation would have been, we put our patients first, changing lives one person at a time, whatever. But there's a massive disconnect between that and your people actually connecting to it. And if we can connect our people to the inspired vision of what we're actually trying to do at a deep level, at a level around, this is the opportunity that you get to do. This is a change that you get to make on our world. And yes, it's through selling whatever, but you get to make this change. And what mechanisms and forums do we have in place in our weekly operations where we're connecting people to truly this inspired vision of what they're doing? That is when their narratives will change. That is when their energy to their job will change. That is when do I have my flashlight and attention and focus on, I'm too tired, I don't want to do this, and my boss is doing this? Or do I have my flashlight on, who can I help today? What if that one patient comes in and needs this today? There is no fear in that. There is no exhaustion in that. That is an inspired vision that enables me to take action at a level that will best execute that process in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's powerful. And you can feel it through, your story, which is, it's a crazy story. And there are so many times, and it could be in the customer service business. It could be, it doesn't matter what business it's in. Every business is alive and thriving because it serves some type of need to a customer. And there is a purpose statement to it. And the question then is, how do we relate to people? And I think, to me, through your story, it's like the shared experiences of what you do as a company and what you're there for that allows you to tie people to it. And I guess maybe the question would be is, people go through training in a business and then they get that as a blurb at the beginning, and then there's no sustainable, continued enforcement of it. And so, maybe that's where, and then I guess maybe, to this conversation, how do you tie that to the A game?
Yeah. Well, again, I think it comes back to this building awareness by looking at and having conversations around what we're actually thinking, what we're feeling, what's working, what's not working. It's like we're too busy to do that. We see that as like, we don't have time for those meetings. We're already, we've already got too many meetings. It's not another, I see this like one of my battles I have when I work in elite sport, when I work with an individual athlete, they've chosen me. So I can tell them, I want to speak to you before each race, after each race. That's, if you want to work with me, that's what it looks like. All of a sudden, when I'm at the Olympics or I'm in an AFL team, I'm like, if the head coach gives me time, he gives me time. If he doesn't give me time, he doesn't give me time. And one of the things that the head coaches are very antsy around is there are too many meetings. The players don't like meetings. We can't have too many meetings. They don't like it. And it's like, this is not a meeting. This is connection. This is us sharing. This is us learning. This is us growing together as people. This is us building awareness. We can't build awareness at something that we don't look at, something that we don't talk about. And if we don't have awareness around it, we can't shift it. We can't change it. And so we have meetings around the results and the actions and the results and the actions, but we don't have time or we don't want to look at what's actually going on for us? And if we actually took some time to look at that, the things will come out. You will start to see that sales rep did well when they had the conversation with the client about that. And then I hear that, I learn that, oh, that worked well for Dwayne when he went in with that approach. Why did that work well? And you're sharing your story, or we're learning off each other, not around Dwayne hit his target this week, Dwayne made 20 sales calls this week, Dwayne went to hard customers who don't know. I'm hearing Dwayne say, I felt really nervous about going, when I had to do that call. And I really was, I don't like that customer. He's a really difficult customer. So what I tried to do is connect him to this. And he really responded. That's learning. That's growth. That's me starting to understand the thoughts and feelings that you used. What was pulling you into your B game, how you got into your A game. I can try that. You can help me shift by knowing that. But if we just sit in the actions and the results column, we miss all of that information that is actually driving human behavior.
Yeah, I wrote down meetings versus connections. Action. The meeting is, what were the actions and what were the results, and then but the connections were, what were the shared stories.
I was going to say, I think sometimes as leaders and coaches of sport, we're scared to go there. We don't want to know. I want to know if it was hard for you. I don't want to know if you were nervous. I don't want to, just go and do it. I don't want to know. I don't want to have that. Don't tell someone you found that hard. Don't tell someone you're struggling with that. Don't put that thought in their head.
It reminded me, that whole conversation just there reminded me of a story from 14 years ago. I think it's about 14 years ago, where I heard Steve Wynn speak, who owns Wynn Resorts and Encore, and been in he basically reinvented Las Vegas. And, customer service is like their number one driving thing. And they would do with all the people that in the hotels that are, in service of others, cleaning rooms, concierge, et cetera, et cetera. They would 15 minutes every morning. All they did was share stories of different people in the hotel that, had impacted a guest in a way of customer service. And that was one of the ways that he built their, attachment to the vision and to the purpose of why they were there. And I think to me, that's kind of epitomized what you were just talking about there.
Yeah. My last session with the Richmond boys before they went out in 2017 was their first grand final. I hadn't won a grand final 37 years. It's like the NFL grand final. It's a big deal. It's like religion in Australia.
Yeah.
And we had my last session, so it's like the day before the game. And I got them in a room and I said, you've got all the skills you need. And I brought each player up the front one at a time, and I sat them on a chair and I got their teammates to tell them what they loved about them. That's it. That was the only instructions. And they were like, I love when I'm on the field and I look over and I see you up tall. I just know you're on. That really excites me. I love watching. I just know when I'm playing with you, you've got my back and you'll put yourself over the ball. They just shared openly. And so many athletes came to me after that game and said, when I was terrified in those, there's millions of people watching this game, the stadium's packed. When I was terrified, all I heard ringing my ear was the voice of my teammate telling me why they loved me. And that changed how they felt. That then changed the action that they took. And then that then changed how they thought. And that put them into their A game. And we don't tell people what we love. I loved in that meeting when you said that. That was awesome. That helped me so much. We just think they're doing their job and they should be, but I'm going to tell them when they're not doing something. And it's like, just share things that helped us, things that they did well, call out, put a spotlight on the things that people are doing well, and you're going to get more of it for sure.
I just love that so much. That takes courage to do. It takes courage to start it. It must have taken courage for you to do it with a bunch of athletes. But that's why you won the first, or helped, the team, and help lead them to the point of winning after 37 years. And I think, my statement to that would be, if that's the kind of organization that you want, if you're a leader, leaders have to go first.
100%.
And that is the critical piece. Emma, we've been chatting for 2.5 hours here. I could go another 2.5. I swear, do need to. So easy.
I know, but I really want to add something in because I think it's really important.
Please.
This year, I should find, there's a little post-it note on my table here somewhere that has this heading that says the year of failure with a line underneath it. And it's got the Olympics, AFL Grand Final, marriage. And I, this year, for the first time in my career, have experienced pretty significant failure. Like, I went to the Olympics with the men and women Australian hockey teams, and both underperformed and were medal chances and didn't even make the medal playoffs. I then came back and into a different AFL club. So I haven't been with Richmond for a couple of years. And this year I worked with a new AFL club, and they were minor premiers. They were on top of the table by 3 games clear. Like, they're just, like, the whole industry was like, wow, these guys are just, wow, Emma Murray, Sydney Swans, rah, rah. And they lost the grand final by, I can't even tell you the final score. It was maybe 80 points. Like, they completely froze.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't this year that my marriage broke down. It was last year, but, it's probably my first year of being, single and living by myself. After the AFL grand final that came right off the back of the Olympics, I was like, okay, I need to go do more learning, and went and explored and did different courses and more reading and more learning and more growing, and really looked at it and really, really explored it. And one of the consistent patterns that came up for me was this accountability piece. And I see in Australia at the moment, and Richmond have a lot to do with this, anything, if we see something successful, we all want to do the same thing. So we then saw all these teams and businesses, let's do what Richmond done. We come from a place of love and come from a place of vulnerability, and it's all about joy and love and blah, blah, blah. And how come we didn't have the success that Richmond had? And my lens through my experience of Richmond, and with anything, with any success, it's like baking a cake. There's a recipe to follow, but then there's also like a little bit of luck thrown in there, and you got to have the right people, and I don't know, it all just seemed to come together at Richmond. But what I learned, the biggest thing that I learned from this year that I've had is that when anything is too out of balance, so Richmond were very much the love and the joy. When I left Richmond, and it wasn't just me leaving Richmond, the captain left Richmond, the leadership group left Richmond, the coach left Richmond. Richmond are bottom of the ladder. The Richmond have gone from 3 premierships in 4 years to bottom of the ladder. And a big piece that I have learnt this year is around when we strip all challenge out of the environment. So I just want to come from this place of, I help you accept and say, it is what it is, and vulnerability and empathy. But I remove the challenge from the environment because I want us to have no threat. So I don't want the threat. I'm trying to get the threat, no threat, so that you can have your attention on your A game. then what happens is when the pressure really comes on, we haven't developed the resources we need in that pressure to perform at our best. And we need challenge in the environment, and we need that threat response to get equipped to deal with that threat response rather than just stripping the environment of that threat response. Does that even make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. Yeah, I mean, so how, is oddly enough, I've often, my wife and I have talked about this, and well, I think something happened in the pandemic for us, anyways, which was you play a pattern for a few years in whatever it is in business, and you get to some level of comfort, whatever that is for anybody. It could be $10,000, $100,000, $100 million, whatever. During COVID, in relation to that, like that threshold, it's like we had a business, one went to zero, another one went down to 40%, and another one went to 50%. And it was like, it was in the moment, in the early moments, it was like, and when I say the early moments, I mean the first day or two, when everything was shutting down, and there's two pieces to it. One is like, obviously just like you go into kind of emergency mode. Okay, what do we need to do? Whatever, blah, blah, blah. And there was a real sense of calm after like a day or two, where I just looked at Tennille and I said, you know what? Like, we've always told the kids, like, this, whatever we have it's not ours. We're just borrowing it while we're on this planet. And if we end up that, this is, the torpedo down for us, and we end up in a 2-bedroom apartment or a 1-bedroom apartment together, I'm okay with that because I'm with you. But the interesting piece about it was that it wasn't 6 months before where I had actually I thought to myself, we need a mix up, like we need a shake up. It would be really, what would happen if we lost, Dale Carnegie had always said, if I lost all my money, but if you leave me my people, I'll have it all back within whatever, a couple of years or whatever. And I always had, like, previous to so be careful what you wish for, but when you go through that, and it was like, I can recall having those conversations in my mind going, wouldn't it be interesting if we just gave it all away and started over? What would that pressure look like? What would that, that desire look like? What would you have to do to, restart again? And how would that feel? How alive might it feel? Or how much fear might you have? And only in those situations can you really, test yourself to find out what you're made of, and what you're capable of dealing with.
Can I challenge you on that for a little bit?
Yeah, please. Yeah, for sure.
I didn't know this until spinal cord injury came into my life, but gee, it was an incredible awareness for me. And this is how I describe it. I describe it that all of us are in a storm. And I don't think I'm challenging you. I completely agree with what you're saying, but I just want to add this to it, is that I think as humans, we exist in a storm. We go out every day out of our house. We sort of get a bit drenched, a bit wet. Now, why do I say that? Well, that's our human wiring. We go out, we look at the bad, we're fighting dangers, we're trying to stay alive. Like, that's just a human experience. Yeah. And we come back into our homes. It was like, oh, that was tough. And, some people open the bottle of wine because they didn't like how it felt. Other people get on online shopping. Some people, lay a bet, yell at their kids, sit on Netflix, scroll through their phone, whatever Netflix. It is. Yep. And anyway, we get up the next day and it was like, we didn't like that, but we go and do it again. We didn't like that and we do it again. There is some moments for some people, I think the pandemic was for most people, where that storm gets upgraded to a hurricane. This was spinal cord injury. For someone else, it's cancer, it's a loss of a loved one, it's, bankruptcy. And when spinal cord injury came, in that moment, your life goes from a storm to a hurricane, and you are getting beaten around. And there is actually, you cannot go out each day into a hurricane. You won't survive it. And so to survive that hurricane, you get to the center of the hurricane in that stillness. You have to find that stillness. You have to find that. And stillness to me is acceptance, dropping the fight. It's just like here, like you were saying, well, I can accept it if I've got you, and I would be okay. I would find that stillness. And people put you up on a pedestal, like, wow, your son broke his neck and look at you and you're so good about it and you can go on and do this and this. And what I try to say to people is that is the easy time to do it. I don't have a choice when I'm getting, my life is at risk. The hard time to do it is when you are stepping out each day into a storm. You've been in your job for 10 years. You don't really like it. You're with a partner that, doesn't really excite you anymore. You earn enough money to pay your bills, but not really enough money to have a holiday. That is when it's hard to find the stillness and to make the changes that you need. Yes. When you learn to have the courage to go, I don't want to go and get wet every day. I want to step out into that storm. I want to step out into different weather condition. I want to do this differently. When really I can survive doing it this way, and I can get through the day long enough to get home to my bottle of wine and my shopping addiction, the courage to make changes during that part, when you're in that is when it's hard. When I had a hurricane that made me make the changes. That was easy.
Yes. Yeah, when the threshold is just, the temperature of the water is not just too hot to jump out of, but it's slowly boiling.
I like that.
Or yeah. That, I mean, you're 100% right. It's an amazing analogy, and so because I feel like I've monopolized your whole day here, but
no.
We're 2 hours and 45 minutes, and I'm looking like at a list of words on my notepad here of things that I've just kind of jotted down that we could have another 2-hour conversation on easily, but what's your best advice for the people where they're in that zone? We used my analogy of the temperature of the water is just not hot enough to jump out. The threshold's not there. What would you say? What's their next best step?
Chunk it down. Just get one thing right. Have full acceptance that you're not going to be perfect at it every day. Chunk it down. Well, first get self-awareness that you're in a storm. Get full awareness around what's making you wet and tired. Get awareness around it. If you don't have awareness around it, you're just going to step out into that storm every single day. Actually look at it. See it. Have time in your day. I have a daughter at the moment, a 24-year-old daughter. She's a young corporate lawyer in M&A in Clayton Utz. She's in the grind. And all I am trying to get her to do right now is to set some boundaries around she's the most insane people pleaser. So we could look at her and put her on a pedestal that she goes to the gym 5:30 every morning, even when she's, works till 2:00 in the morning. She never misses a gym thing. She does her meal prep on Sunday night, every night. She, to the outside world, she ticks every box. To me, she's just a wild people pleaser and it looks great to everyone else. So I'm not fooled by that, but I'm saying work out what you need to what do I want for her? Work out what you need to have a better human experience each day. And what you need to have a better human experience each day is moments where you connect with yourself and you see what's going on for yourself. So, because if she doesn't see what's going on for her, she's going to end up 50 with the golden handcuffs on, just more money, partnership in the law firm, and her life's going to be gone. So I want her to see what's going on for herself, see what you think about that, see what you feel like. Notice how it makes you feel working on that deal. Notice how it makes you feel when you're in that environment so you can actually start to get the full experience of what you're going through and not stay numb to this experience. And so I'm asking her to have a conversation with her boss. It sounds like this. I want to be productive for you. I want to give you my all. I'm more productive when I get sunlight. And so I need, not negotiable, to eat my meal, my lunch outside in sunshine with no screens. If you give me 30 minutes to do that, you're going to reap the rewards at the other end of the day. I also need to eat dinner before the sun goes down. I can't eat it at, when I get home at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm asking you to give me 30 minutes where I step outside, I'm present with my food, I eat my food. So she's building into her day 2 moments where she can connect with herself, feel what she needs to feel, process what she needs to prep, and be present and aware of what's going on in her life, what I'm eating, what I'm feeling in the sunshine, so that she can actually be present in her life. That's what I'm asking you. And that is she going to get that right every day? No, but it's going to stop her getting on a treadmill, an unaware treadmill that turns into 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. So
I think that is amazing advice.
I don't know. I'm making this shit up, Dwayne. Like,
no,
seriously,
I
really, I get off the phone. I'm like, is that the right thing to say? I don't know.
Well, I think, what I like about it is that it is congruent with, this awareness piece of step 1 and step 3 of your formula, which is like, be aware of what is going to, what is happening, when you're running your B game, have that awareness, and then also have that awareness on the other side of, how to create those physical triggers to get your A game back. And unless you start somewhere in the process, which is, I think what you're saying is, if you like, that, and I love how you said it, was just like advice to your daughter. Well, if it's advice to your daughter, it's good enough for the listener for sure. But I am so aligned with, we walk around unaware of where we are and what this human experience is, and some of the emotions that are driving that, and all the things that you talked about. Like, I actually did have it reminds me of a question that I did actually have for you, which was, in that, in the process of stopping the loop, and acceptance. What if people become addicted? Like, and maybe addicted's the wrong word, but addicted to the negative emotion of acceptance. Like, for example, blame, anger, frustration, depression, sadness, pity. What happens in that situation? Because I think that that's also part of the awareness. And so when I said I wasn't going to ask any more questions,
and I wasn't going to keep talking, but I am going to talk on that because when I went and started working with the men's Olympic hockey team, and I can't believe we've been speaking for this long and we haven't even talked about being in Paris in the Olympic Village and the emotion and the human behaviour and everything else that was wildly there.
We're gonna have to have another conversation, Emma. I think this has been too good.
But when I came into the men's hockey team, they were 7th in the world, underperforming. They had this culture that was a bit abrasive and rah-rah. And, I was speaking about acceptance, because they'd get into umpires. If they made a mistake, they'd hold it and they'd blame each other and rah-rah. And, straight off the bat, they were like, yeah, got it right. And then the more I would talk about it, I would see this agitation in the group. And I was sort of picking up on it. I continue to talk about it. They're getting more and more agitated until I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's your problem with this? And they're like, well, we're elite athletes. We want to win an Olympic gold medal. I don't want to make a mistake and just go, oh, what do I say? Can't change it. Is what it is. I don't want to not make a team and go, well, I can't control what that selected things and that's that. Like I don't want to sit in that space of just like handing sort of the power of my success over to, well, I can't really change that. So that's that. I'm like, that is why there's steps in the process. I can't get over into my A game if I don't accept it and turn off the smoke alarm. But I'm not in my A game if I'm in acceptance. So I talk about acceptance is a really nice place to be when you're just in your car, end of the day, you know, like, or I'm with my kids, you know, or I'm just out in the garden on the weekend. I'm just accepting it. Maybe I've got all these feelings, but that's not me bringing my best to the situation. I then want to put my focus on, what can I do? I can't change what he can think. It's out of my control at that deadline. But hang on, what can I do here to bring my strengths to this moment, to own this moment, to show up in this moment, to really, you know, have impact in this moment, bring my inspired vision to life in this moment, have real impact. What can I do? The acceptance piece is to turn that alarm off. It's to drop the fight. But what I see, people lose relationships, they lose years, they lose energy, they lose time because they're stuck on, and he said and she said, and this should have happened, and why didn't that happen? And this, it's like you're just hanging out trying to change reality and just looping time and energy on something that you can't change. Use acceptance so that you can get your flashlight off it. That is all acceptance is doing. Is just giving you enough space and like unhooking it from that thing. So now I can put it somewhere that's more powerful, more helpful, more useful.
Yeah, I love it. I call that getting time and distance. But yeah, I love this. Oh, Emma, such a great conversation. I'm so grateful for your time.
I'm so grateful we got the headphone microphone working.
The struggle was real to get this thing to happen. I legit actually thought at some point in time, this podcast might not happen. So I'm super glad it did. It was, it was an amazing conversation. You're an amazing woman. There's so much more we could talk about. This with both of our schedules, this was very difficult to you're a very busy woman, very successful. You should be so proud of yourself. I'm so grateful for your sharing of today with our listeners. There's just so many unbelievable things in this podcast. It is going to be amazing.
I want to finish. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you for having me. I am certainly don't know your full story, but certainly know that whatever you approach, you do it with your full heart, your full energy, and your podcast is certainly shaping up to be a reflection of that. But I think my parting message to your listeners is that it is really tough right now. It's tough to be human. The overwhelm is real. The burnout is real. The alarm system's going off. And this is not restricted to just people who are, not very successful. This is all of us. This is, imposter syndrome is more real for people at the top of the tree than at the bottom of the tree. Like it is real, and we are struggling, and that is normal, and it is okay. And it is okay and normal to feel overwhelmed. But we have everything we need inside of us, everything we need. And yes, there is a real, anxiety, depression. They're big, they're real. And I'm not talking to the 1 in 5. I'm talking to the 4 in 5 right now. Like, you have everything you need inside of you to manage these thoughts and these feelings that are driving your behaviors. It just takes focus and awareness and attention and deliberate and purposeful choice around looking at it every single day. And every single day you'll get it wrong, but every single day you got to show up and have a crack. Not at building a bigger business, at managing your staff, seeing what's going on for you, seeing what's going on for your business. The results will take care of itself. They really will.
Yeah. The bigger business is just a side effect of all the other things. And you're right. You will get it wrong. I get it wrong all the time. I have every single one of these feelings constantly, all day, every day. And every day I get it wrong, and every day I also get some of it right. And that's what I try to. That's what we're here to build on. And these are great words to end on. Emma, thank you so much. And
thank you to Heather in the background that does an amazing job.
She's amazing. Yeah, Heather is phenomenal. And Heather, don't cut this out of the podcast.
Yeah, no editing, Heather.
If I don't tell her to not cut it out, she won't cut it out. So, yeah, people have no idea how amazing she is and how much she's such a huge help to me, and to our team. And yeah, so God bless you, woman. Thank you so much. Everybody, take a listen. Oh, Emma, how did the people find you? I always forget this at the end.
God, I'm really bad at this piece.
I know, but please, you have so many things to share, so I think this is really important.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, High Performance Mindfulness is the name of my business, which you can Google. I do have Instagram. I've been off social media. I'm terrible with social media. I dip in and dip out, but High Performance Mindfulness is on Instagram, and m.murray1, I think, on Instagram as well. You'll find me, Google me. Be patient with me if I don't get back to you straight away. I'm super passionate about this space. I want to help as many people as I can. It's
It's evident. And next time you're on, I think we really need to share. I mean, and I didn't want to get too deep into it, but the story of your son and what your family are overcoming, and it's incredible. I think it's highperformancemindfulness.com is your website.
There you go.
Correct?
I think, yeah.
So guys, that's how you find Emma.
I don't have a sales process in place.
Well, I have some ideas for you that I've written down, so we'll have to have a conversation.
Thank you.
But anyways, it's just so cool. I love what you're doing, and I love how you're sharing it with people. And so, I'm wishing you all the best, and I am looking forward to. We're coming to Australia in May, so maybe we'll connect and do a podcast there.
Definitely.
Right out of Australia, which would
come into an AFL cool. club. Come into the club.
There you go. Yeah. We'll come watch some AFL. Yeah. I'd love it.
Perfect.
Okay, kiddo. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
See ya.
Okay.